Marusan comes with an exciting announcement in the form of Shin Godzilla. Today we're looking at the newly announced 4th form Shin Godzilla Sofubi toy by Marusan. Now, apologies in advance, this is not going to be the most visually interesting because I only have this one picture to work off of. Now, at the time of this recording, I believe this figure was unveiled as of about maybe 4 or 5 days ago, so this is a relatively new announcement, and I had a feeling that Marusan was going to unveil their 4th form Shin sometime soon because it's been about maybe a month and a half ago that I saw their first Shin Godzilla figure, which was the Kamada-kun Sofubi toy that has been circulating and now you can find on eBay and other Japanese websites here and there. So this is really interesting because they skipped the 3rd form and they went straight to the 4th form. I do wonder if they will be doing a 3rd form. I feel that naturally it's probably already done or in the works just to have a complete set. To my knowledge, as of right now, this is the first colorway release, so this 4th form Shin and that Kamada-kun are both this same sort of very deep pink, slightly purplish color. So I think it's safe to assume that if they make that 3rd form Shin, it would also be the same color as these 2nd and 4th forms. Aside from just being a Shin Godzilla collector, this announcement is really exciting to me because Marusan makes some of my favorite Sofubi toys. They've been around for literally decades and decades and decades, and I think they put out some of the best Sofubi toys in the most interesting colorways, especially the way that they play with glitter and translucent vinyl in particular. That's what really sets them apart for me from many of the other companies. So this announcement to me is extremely exciting. I'm so happy now they finally put their hat in the ring alongside other companies like Sun Guts and Passion Tank with their famous Shin Godzilla 4th form figures in particular. So I think that it's safe to assume, just like basically all their other figures, while this 4th form Shin, this initial release is in this colorway, down the line, I think that these will be easily accessible, and I'm not even talking that far off from the time of this recording. We'll probably be getting colorway after colorway after colorway for the next few years, which I'm really excited to see. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because I know that this is going to cost a pretty penny for my wallet because I'm likely to get more than one based on whatever colors they put out. Definitely some form of glitter one. A glitter Shin would just be a dream made in heaven. So I'm really looking forward to seeing possibly some form of glitter release. I don't know, based on this initial release, if I want to get this particular colorway. I'm curious to see what it would look like in a more realistic colorway, which, you know, they always do with their figures. They do some form of semi-screen accurate coloring. So I'm curious to see what that would look like because the details here, we're looking at one color, but you can see as we get closer to it momentarily that there is a nice amount of detail here. So this particular advertisement here directly from Marusan is just indicating that this figure will be available at a pop-up shop somewhere in Japan. Very jealous of those who are able to just walk around neighborhoods in Japan and find these pop-up shops and just buy Shin Godzilla Sofubi toys just like that. That's really exciting. And based on what we have here, so this figure is part of the 350 series of Marusan figures. So for those who are not as familiar, Marusan tends to categorize their figures either in the 350 series of figures or 450 series of figures. So the 350 series, which this Shin is a part of, you can see here, this one is noted as 28 centimeters, which I believe is the case for the entire 350 series. I don't know if each figure is exactly about 10 inches tall, but that's this category of Shin Godzilla figure. I'm not sure if in the future Marusan will make a 450 series one. It's basically, that series is essentially the same sculpts, just slightly larger. I think they're closer to 12 inches tall. And based on this picture here, yes, we have a limited angle to get a full sense of what it looks like, but I think this will be a pretty hefty figure. Shin Godzilla tends to be a chunky character in toy form, so I'm excited to see how this will exactly look in hand. Now, taking a closer look, I want to start with the head sculpt. I think that this looks really nice. I think they got that sort of strange smile going on here. You can see that the figure does have a slightly open mouth with what looks to be individually sculpted teeth. In this particular colorway, it looks like they're done either in slight silver or white or semi-clear vinyl. It's hard to say exactly. Moving up the head a little bit, you have those eyes that are really bulging out. I like the expression on this figure. It's definitely distinct from other Sofubi toy company Shin Godzilla figures. This one very much is giving the idea that he's very excited, almost, I'm going to say, almost puppy-like, which is kind of funny and a weird way to describe Shin Godzilla for sure. I am curious to see the full 360 of this figure, but as we pull out a little bit more, I just want to look at the tail briefly. You can't get a full sense of how much this tail might be curving. It honestly doesn't look like it is curving that much, but I won't, fully assess it until we can see a full figure from every angle. But I wouldn't be too upset if this tail isn't super big, especially if I'm going to get more than one version of this figure. I don't want them to take up a lot of space. But the overall silhouette of this figure, including the tail, from this one image that we can see here, I think that they really captured the look of Shin Godzilla very well. We have the general proportions here. We have that chest crest, the arms, one of my favorite details, being kind of raised up, or I should say the hands being raised up, that chubby stomach and the big legs. I like the feet in particular here. It doesn't look like they really went for any of those extra toes anywhere as far as I could tell, so it kind of has a very normal foot appearance, which is interesting. You can definitely see Marusan's take on the character in this figure, where they kind of smoothed out Shin Godzilla almost, but as we pan through the figure and zoom in a little bit, you can see that the striations are still captured here in the sculpt itself. I guess what I mean is it doesn't look like there's a lot of like ridged sections in the figure that are kind of like bumpy and just differing textures. The figure itself kind of just has line work throughout it that indicates these striations. I don't know if I'm getting my point across very well here, but regardless of what I'm trying to say, I do think that it looks great. And honestly, the figure itself in this particular color, I'm not sure if this is an entirely clear figure. It kind of looks like it is. I could definitely see this one being put up against light and having this wonderful color just strike right through it. Definitely as a first colorway release, I'm sure someone can repaint it to make it look like an Atomic Breath version if you wanted to go semi-realistic. But it's a nice color choice, like I said. I guess another detail that's interesting is that the fingernails and toenails are kind of sprayed slightly black, so it kind of gives it a little bit of contrast. I think that's maybe the most contrast in the entire figure. I don't have a lot else to say here for this figure other than that I'm really excited for it. I'll give a little bit of an interesting story for anyone who wants to hear it. Now, I'm not going to remotely say that I had any sort of influence in the release of this figure. I'm sure that Marusan would have inevitably done a Shin Godzilla figure release, but interestingly enough, I did meet the current president of Marusan, Eiji Kamenaga, at Five Points Festival in Brooklyn, I think in summer of 2022 now. I think it's already been 2 years. And I knew he was going to be there, so I went to meet him. I bought one figure from their booth. He was very nice, and we actually chatted for a while. We bonded over tokusatsu, some of the figures that I own from Marusan. And funny enough, him and I are both like super fans of Phantom of the Opera, the musical version in particular. Granted, I love all versions. This is totally separate from Godzilla, but we had an interesting connection there. And at some point during the conversation, I said to him, Mr. Kamenaga, I beg of you to please make a Shin Godzilla figure. Shin Godzilla is my favorite. And we wound up taking a walk throughout the venue, kind of passing different booths, and we were just chatting a little bit over like the toys and Phantom of the Opera, like I said. And he was just kind of saying to me that like he was thinking of making, but it was kind of like a licensing thing, which I think all of us toy collectors know, especially when it comes to Toho, Godzilla, licensing, whatever you want to say. That's a very tricky path to follow, especially when you're a company producing Godzilla figures. And I'm sure he couldn't even tell me much anyway, because I'm essentially just a random guy he's just meeting for the first time, so he's not going to tell me anything. But the point of the story is it's just interesting because I had this conversation with him at the time, and I think a little over 2 years later now, it's kind of a full circle moment where I'm like, wow, I spoke to Mr. Kamenaga himself about this, and now it's happening. So it's really cool. This story might have been slightly boring for maybe the majority of you, but for those who enjoyed it, thank you for enjoying it. So now that story time has ended, just to reiterate my points here, I think that this figure looks fantastic. I'm so excited to get my hands on it. I have a strong hunch that these are going to be readily available on eBay, and maybe some other Japanese sites within the next couple of weeks. Really exciting. I can picture myself having some form of this figure maybe within the next month or two. Granted, I do kind of want to sit out a little bit and wait for other colorway releases. I am particularly curious about you guys who collect Shin Godzilla Sofubi toys like from the other companies, Spiral, Sarajirushi, Sun Guts, Passion Tank. What do you think of Marusan's take on the character? I think that they're coming late into it because we have so many other companies that have done fourth form Shins, so it's certainly interesting to see such an established company do their take on a very established character as well. That's been done a lot from other companies. I'm not going to draw this out too much more, but I guess one final note is I'm really eager to see what their third form Shin is going to look like, and I imagine that maybe the second and inevitably third and this form would scale nicely with each other. It would only make sense to do it that way. I really hope that that third form Shin is done in an upright posture. If you've seen my Keshi toy review, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I am curious to know if you guys are eyeing this piece, the second form, or even possibly that third form that may be coming out sometime in the future. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel and you like the content, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and taking a look at my other Godzilla figure content on the channel as well. Lastly, thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.